Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Jack's Train of Thought. And today we are going to be covering Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Now, Scott Pilgrim is a comic book series that I enjoy very much, but today we're going to be focusing more on the movie instead, as it is one of my favorite movies of all time. Now, this is going to be a little mini series we're going to be doing for now, because there's just a ton to cover, and I don't want to make a huge, long, hour-long video explaining everything that's so great about it. So I'm going to kind of take it in pieces and go over in sections about why it is such a great film. Now, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World was directed by Edgar Wright, and he worked closely with the author of the comic book series, Brian Lee O'Malley, in order to bring his comics to life, which was pretty impressive considering that the comics hadn't even finished yet. They hadn't even finished releasing all the books yet at the time of the movie's production. Now let's go ahead and just jump right into this, since I don't really want to take too long. We're going to go ahead and give you a little quick overview of the plot.
Scott Pilgrim was dating a high schooler.
22-year-old Scott Pilgrim is living in Toronto, Canada, and is dating a high schooler named Knives Chow, who is 17. Everything's all cool and not weird at all, until he has a dream where this girl roller skates through his head. Well, we've all been there. Scott doesn't think too much of this until he sees her in real life and is all like, whoa! He tries to find out more about her, discovering she's American and works for Amazon. Ultimately, he ends up meeting the girl whose name is Ramona Flowers, and it's quite clear he wants to date her. But Scott has to deal with Ramona's 7 evil exes and fight each one before he can do so. How can you not love a setup like that? This, of course, raises moral qualms about the girl he's already dating, as Scott is a bit of a jerk, and is really only dating Knives as a rebound from a previous girlfriend. The story deals with Scott having a history of being sort of a total jerkface in his dating life, and Ramona having a similar record. So right off the bat, we have a very human and relatable protagonist, although one we might not want to relate to, but it might be what we get. On one side, Scott has been kind of a douche in his past relationships, and it's clear to everyone. But on the other side, Scott doesn't really notice. He doesn't see the effects of his past actions. He assumes that everything is resolved and fine when they aren't. The actions Scott takes seem to be objectively wrong. But Scott isn't exactly malicious in this. He simply doesn't understand. The movie is an homage to classic gaming, anime, and garage bands, but the relatable slice of life style of the main plot blends incredibly well. If we really boil down the plot, it's incredibly simple. Guy has girl troubles, meets girl of his dreams, chases her down through challenge. If anything, this movie is taking an extremely practical idea and viewing it through the lens of an exciting arcade game. Now, there are so many things I adore about this movie. I like the fact that it takes creative liberties while still remaining true to the comics. I like the soundtrack, the fight scenes, the editing, and I'll get to most of those in a later video, or several later videos. But I had some friends watch this movie, and they weren't really sure what was going on, so it made it a little bit more difficult for them to actually fully appreciate it. So instead of going super in-depth today, I'm just going to go ahead and give you an idea of what to expect going in, and how to enjoy this movie for yourself before you watch it. I think a big reason as to why this movie can be a little overwhelming if you're not prepared is simply our need to understand the world's laws. When you go into a movie blind, your natural assumption is that its universe's laws follow our own, especially when seeing a comedy. However, in Scott Pilgrim, the universe doesn't have a strict set of laws. It's similar to an arcade-style fighting game at times, but there's not a whole lot that's concrete. It seems like the world can switch from somewhat normal life to a boss battle in a second. However, in Scott Pilgrim, the universe doesn't have a strict set of laws. It is similar to an arcade-style fighting game at times, but there's not a whole lot that's concrete. It seems like the world can switch from somewhat normal life to a boss battle in a second. It's essentially a dramatized version of a guy's dating troubles. The closest thing I can really compare it to is Calvin and Hobbes. In this newspaper comic strip, Calvin is often in a completely normal situation, but we, the reader, see it through the lens of his childlike imagination. For example, Calvin, acting as Spaceman Spiff in his mind, is being attacked by an alien and tortured for information, when in reality, his mom is just giving him a bath. The difference here is that in Scott Pilgrim, there's no big reveal. It isn't shown at the end that his world is the same as ours. Instead, the dramatized reality is taken simply as reality. Something out of the ordinary happens in this world and the characters just brush by it. There isn't really a reaction. The audience will be surprised, but to the characters, it's just another day in the Canadian life. Another reason it's easy to get lost in this movie is the very fast-paced editing. Edgar Wright doesn't waste the audience's time. He has a story to tell you, and you have a story to watch. People have become used to filler in movies, such as slow, dramatic shots of scenery and minute-long driving scenes set to background music. This movie just simply doesn't have that. It uses its runtime extremely well, and we, as an audience, just aren't used to that. So when going into watching this movie, interestingly enough, you need to not try and make sense out of every detail. When you see someone explode into coins, just go with it. This movie isn't trying to build a detailed world with clear logical rules. It's not about characters living in a world with different rules. It's about the characters themselves and their development. A lot of movies are about characters in a strange world and they have to adapt. In Scott Pilgrim, the strange world is just normal life. Focus on enjoying the characters in this zany universe and a fast-paced comedy paired with relatable storytelling. There is so much more to say about this movie, but it's past midnight right now, and that means it's almost 2 hours away from my bedtime. I'm just gonna have a little cut there. Don't keep that little in. That's not. I just want to make sure you know that right away.
I'm gonna make it funny. You have no say in this.
I have more videos coming out on this movie soon, detailing stuff and analyzing stuff such as the comedy, fight scenes, editing, and more. But for now, I would just suggest going and watching the movie, then coming back, and then next week, I'll have another video up for you. So it's a good deal. It's a good deal right there. All right. That's all I really have to say here. I got to go to bed. Peace out, loves.